that your child cut off their relationship with you, with their mother or father. I don't know if this might have happened to you or perhaps to one of your friends or acquaintances, but believe me, it's one of the most talked about topics and yet the most misunderstood when it comes to the decisions of adult children. If you have surfed the internet, you could find two completely different opinions. One side is an act of children and having finally gathered the courage to leave their parents' nest, while the other side says that it's selfish, cruel, and a symptom of a poisoned wide friction. I want us to talk about what psychology and research actually say because I think both sides miss a lot of nuance. Today, we will deal with why adult children cut contact with, who bout and initiates it, how parents and children experience it differently, whether it is a painful process that parents and children need to overcome, or perhaps, first, let's define what we are talking about, which is often contact called family estrangement in the literature refers to a conscious decision to end or drastically limit communication with a test mouse. Do you agree with me? This mouse or my merely blocking a prose de be conic when a vunigant, or it to be more gradual. That intentional decision, the distance conscious themselves from their parents. How common is this? Do you think this only happened to you that you are now going? Believe me, this is more common than most would assume. Research by the University of Cambridge, led by Dr. Lucy Blake, showed that about 27% of families in the U.S. are. In the UK, the numbers are similar. A study by Carl Pilmer at Cornell University, which included over 1,100 Americans, found that approximately 27% of respondents cases related to the parent-child relationship. So this is not a fringe phenomenon. This is not something that happens only in a small number of. This is widespread not only in America, but across the entire planet Earth. And believe me, what that family goes through is a public taboo topic that is not talked about in silence, without much support, and often with a lot of shame. And what do you think about it? Here is one of the most important research or common cultural assumption adult children and parents experience separating from each other in various ways. This research by Dr. Christina Sharp at the University of Washington might be painful for you. Adult children from parents are the most common reasons for cutting contact, toxic or abusive behavior, or unloved feeling controlled, lack of acceptance, or life choices, and a dissounding pattern of poor to communicate identity that never improved despite attempts to work on it. Critically, most adult children do not cut contact impulsively. Research almost always lasts after years, sometimes decades of trying to make the relationship work. Typically, there is a long history of reconciliation attempts, boundary setting, attempts to repair the relationship that failed before the child made a decision to completely withdraw. This is important to understand because parents often perceive cutting contact as the grundle a normal family dynamic, but describes that decision as a process, not an event, a process involving enormous grief, guilt, and ambivalence. Listen to this, because this research gets really interesting, a completely different story. Studies that examined both sides revealed that the two parties almost never agree on the cause. Estrangement to external influences. A partner who drove a wedge between them, encouraged the child to label them as villains, the toxic family, culture on social media, or the child's. They often describe themselves as blindsided, claiming they had no idea anything was wrong, or they see themselves as victims of a child who is simply oversensitive. In contrast, adult children describe in detail that they crown history or a long behavior that probably cutting contacts, they conjects. This conscious is not just a This is about Maya. Deep humans, like most people, are subject to self-serving bias that tend to interpret ambiguous information in a way that portrays them in a good light. To accept the idea that they might have been harmful to someone they love, whether they were aware of it or not. Therefore, it often happens that parent four are not even aware of what their child, or they didn't even want to listen to their child and hear their opinion. This is not specific only to the parent-child relationship. We see this dynamic in toxic partner relationships, friendships that fall apart. The person causing harm almost never sees, tests as the same extent as the source of harm. What are those the person enduring that harm, forcing them to leave you? Dr. Sharp tests several recurring themes: emotional abuse, chronic contempt, humiliation, emotional invalidation, not wanting to, physical abuse in childhood that was never acknowledged or resolved was another major factor. For the child was parentification, where the child was forced to assume an inappropriate role, appeared again. Addiction, neglect were also common. Yet, one of the most consistent factors was the parent's failure to acknowledge or for the harm caused in the past. Necessarily demand that the parent be perfect. Often, they simply sought an acknowledgement never arrived. The relationship became untenable. What? Minor disagreement lifestyle or child rearing. When adult children say that cutting contact was nisdet, the right decision even when they describe it as necessary for their survival, almost universally test. Let's be clear. Grief is omnipresent on both sides. Most estranged children grieve the relationship they wish they had not, just the one they actually had. There is for a childhood that could have been different and for a future relationship that will now never happen. There is also enormous ambivalence. They wonder if they were too harsh or if the parent might have changed. During major life as weddings, the birth of children, illnesses, deaths, estrangement becomes acutely painful in a new way. Those moments is a essential source of grief for both sides. Even those who intellectually stand fully behind their decision often carry a persistent gnawing guilt, told that what they are doing because society sends that, sometimes in 1,000 subtle ways. The expectation that family bonds are unconditional and that breaking them is not to a you did. It's his mindset contact, or a sign of avoiding emotionally. This is the question actually people want the answer to the most. Actually, improve mental health for both sides. Generally supports the idea that for an estrangement can be, with better mental health outcomes. Dr. Sharp's qualitative research reported a reduction in anxiety and depression, and after contact between them and their parents, they described feeling safer, more like themselves, and having more capacity for healthy relationships once the draining or harmful relationship. That the process of estrangement is rarely clean or linear. Many describe a cycle of relief, von grief, von guilt, von tentative attempts at reconnecting, and what seems crucial, partners, close friends, therapists that validate their experience fare significantly better than those who go through it in. Here is something that is not about enough, something that is not talked about enough. Many estrangements do not last forever. Research suggests that a significant portion of estranged family, at least partially, but the conditions and the nature of that reconnected relationship usually look different from the children and parents. What is acknowledging the promises made toward them, real, accountability and evidence, promises, not just so, not perfection, but acknowledging the truth. When the parent responds with tactics that further erode trust, guilt denying through other family members, the child's experience involving third parties or playing the victim without, often in these families, there is a third party dynamic, the other parent, uncle, someone who is more focused on uncle, preserving the apparent peace and problem. Those family members, however well-intentioned, often function as enablers. They pressure the estranged child to reconcile and make excuses for the problematic parent. By doing so, from the harmful persons of their behavior, which is the loss of the relationship with the child. As I said before, enabling does not protect the person being indulged, it deprives them. Sincere love sometimes means late of the consequences of their actions. Sincere love family estrangees is much more common than we think. As a last resort, after years of failed attempts to talk to their parents, the causes are usually serious: abuse, chronic emotional damage, failure not emotional the truth, and not some banal things, which reflects how difficult it is for all of to see ourselves as a source of pain to those we love. Cutting contact carries a high emotional price, but in certain cases, reconciliation is possible, but it requires taking responsibility, not pressure on denial. If you are an adult child going through this, is this no duality that the grief is other. If you are a parent from whom a child has become estranged, no, through pressure and shifting blame does not to others, but the path through a sincere openness, the might defend yourself, feed the bystander, and you, family member, that caught in the crossfire, have the need knows a fix. The blissix. The two people directly involved find their own way. Dear connections, this primarily refers to parents. Listen to your children, respect their opinions and decisions, support your children. Listen. This also applies to children. Do not immediately criticize your parents. Do not think you lack support on their part. They are simply more experienced than you and want to advise you. And video, if you did, please write me your opinions on the relationships between parents and children. Follow our channel. I wish you a beautiful and sunny day. See you.